It's a very great pleasure. It's a very great pleasure to be on this platform. As being communicated, I will be discussing the issue of community-led monitoring and evaluation. And it's quite interesting to have such a conversation when we are discussing about shifting the power. We know that this is not a very easy or comfortable conversation to have. And I would like to start with a statement I made at my previous communication as part of the webinar series by INTRAC, that I appreciate the platform and opportunity to discuss such issues and to look at different ways of approaching our development initiatives. But that being said, I will have to be very open and acknowledge the fact that some of the conversations we are having are not really comfortable conversations, but they are really about finding alternative ways to approach our development initiatives and intervention. So when we talk about shifting the power, clearly we are acknowledging to a very high extent that there are power asymmetries, and that needs to be addressed. And so what does that mean? We are looking at colonial power, political power, institutional power, right? And we are also looking definitely at financial or resource power, who has and who does not have the resources. And we are also considering aspects pertaining to knowledge power or expert power. You know, sometimes evaluators or consultants, conducting the process of the evaluation are assumed to have knowledge over the people that they are evaluating. And we also have cultural power and communal power. And I think for us, particularly in this segment of the conversation that I'm bringing about is really to looking at the latter, which is really about the people who is at the center of the process of change or development. Monitoring and evaluation is being regarded as one of the most emerging practice of our time, of our era, and for some reason it seems to be more of a recent development practice. However, there are evidences that monitoring and evaluation has been part of traditional ways of people governing themselves and assessing how they are progressing. Kusek and Rees, for instance, recount that in ancient Egypt, about more than 5,000 years ago, that they had this ability to monitor the country's grain and livestock outputs, using this innate practice of assessing and measuring how they were able to respond to the food crisis of that time. And this is to say that it is peculiar to every society, people, group, or community. So monitoring and evaluation is not necessarily, as we portray it, as so much of an expert practice that is only within the prerogative of a few people. Unfortunately, this is what we are projected to be. And I think as we are discussing shifting the power, we have to look at ways that we democratize the knowledge and simplify access to this so-called technical knowledge and expertise, so that it becomes more of a practice and a culture within our different circles in society. So, and just along the same thoughts, I also look at monitoring and evaluation less in response to resource allocation, right? And what I mean is we do not necessarily conduct a monitoring and evaluation and for the purpose of responding to the needs or the demand of who allocate the resources, right? Even though that can be justified in terms of providing accountability, it is not the primary reason for which we need to conduct monitoring and evaluation. Monitoring and evaluation is primarily in respect to observing change. And given the fact that change is innate and inherent to every society, group, people, or community, it means that there is ownership of the change by different stakeholders, by different parties, by different entities within the development intervention area. And so what I'm very interested in this conversation is to look at the principles, the conduct, the products, and the use of what we call the community-led monitoring and evaluation. And a lot of thoughts come to mind. For instance, who instigates the evaluation process? Who owns it? And whose interest does it serve? We believe that for any monitoring and evaluation endeavor that must benefit the community that is receiving the intervention, it must be contextually relevant, culturally sensitive, it must be value-driven and community-owned. And so what do we mean by value-driven? In any community that receives an intervention, there are inherent values that this community uphold and lives by. And it is very important that no evaluation endeavor is conducted or undertaken without regard to the values that drive this community. And again, as I end my thoughts, any evaluation process that does not add value to the organization that carries the process is one that must be disregarded or discarded. What do I mean? There must be a value that is derived from the point of view of whoever conducts the process to ensure that it does not only serve for the purpose of accounting for resources, but it also enables development and growth within the organization. So pure M&A activities related to projects must be seen as non-inclusive and not enabling of the development of both the organization and the communities. So we have to look at it from a different paradigm. And I want to share a final example from the African Development Bank. We've been on one platform for conversation about their independent review mechanism. And they have shared a very good examples of a project in Uganda that was postponed just for the fact that the target communities' cultural and spiritual values were overlooked, and they had to halt the process to consider the ways that some of those facts were affecting the community and provide redress to the project. So this is really to provide us some thoughts for reflection and discussion as we move on in this conversation. Thank you very much.